This is the Get a Life podcast. Ex-Cult Conversations.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Get a Life podcast, Ex-Cult Conversations. We are joined today with Carmen and again, our very special guests, Lindy and Craig. We have an exceptional good news podcast today from Craig and Lindy in regards to new funeral changes that happened for them that they're going to dive into. But first, we want to give a Palmerston North update. So we have received quite a few emails and messages from insiders regarding how they're going to recoup the cost of this Palmy Party that happened. And I'm going to let Carmen dive into some of the numbers to let everyone know what kind of money Bruce Hales may make off of this. Go ahead, Carmen.
Well, it's kind of funny because we've got such a large variety of different reports this time. Sometimes when you get a report, you just get 10 more reports of the same thing. And this time it appears like they're being a little bit creative. So the initial reports that we got from sort of UK, Canada, Australia, not right in New Zealand. And it's been reported that at the care meeting, a letter was read, and they're expecting worldwide the brethren to pay $20 per head to cover the cost of this special midweek fellowship meeting in Palmerston North. So when you figure that out, you can guesstimate there's 50-some thousand people at $20 a head. You will get a couple $1 million. Well, then interestingly, the news has come out of Palmerston and New Zealand area. And in New Zealand, if you attended the Palmy Party, you are going to be invoiced an extra $100 per head to cover your subsidized travel to Palmerston North. So if you guesstimate around 8,000 visitors went to the Palmy Party, that would be another $800,000. So close to about $3 million intake for the Palmy Party in total. So then we got to thinking, gosh, that seems like a lot of money for a 2-meeting Palmy Party. Because it literally was 2 meetings. It was 1 meeting on Wednesday and 1 meeting on Friday. 0 meetings on Thursday. And so we started thinking about security costs and estimates at about $120,000. Private jet chartered from Sydney to Wellington up to somewhere in the ballpark of Palmy, and then vehicle cavalry to escort the Mogpog into Palmerston North. And that's around, well, the charter jet, the estimate was about $75,000. And then, of course, all of the vehicles. Security at about $120,000. The bill from Vendemia, we had an insider that actually witnessed the bottle list and the bill from Vendemia. And for the 2 days, it was over $100,000. And then there would be the food cost. But even when you add all those up and sort of throw in a few incidentals, that only comes to about $600,000. So we're just kind of assessing and thinking about that. He's going to take in close to $3 million. And we have identified about $600,000 outgoing. I wonder where the extra $2.4 million is going. Any ideas, Craig?
What an absolute rort. That sounds like an absolute rort from what you're saying. That's unbelievable. I can't work out why the average Joe and Jane blogs in there isn't doing this math and asking some questions. Shouldn't charitable institutions and church entities have complete financial transparency? Is anybody asking on the inside, asking where this money's going?
Well, and the interesting part is, even if you didn't personally attend the meeting, so you're not personally paying for your part of the Palmy Party or the subsidized travel, if you watched it on Zoom, you are expected to pay your $100 invoice as well. What? So even the pregnant and elderly people that stayed in the Auckland meeting room, and watched it by Zoom, even they don't get a break. They get a $100 invoice for having the honor of watching the Palmy Party.
Oh my gosh, that is shocking. You know what? The brethren and other people around the rest of the world, absolutely ridicule and rubbish kind of the televangelist type people who appear to be in religion for the money, or the people who say that there's, you've got to come and give your tithe up the front, or give money up the front of the stage, or whatever. We mock and ridicule those Christians who do that. And yet it appears that Bruce Hales is doing exactly the same thing, but he's just doing it under a Trojan horse, right? Of saying, oh, here's a conference that, by the way, you didn't get to choose to come to this or not. You were told to come to it. And then afterwards, here are these bills, and you have to pay for that privilege. That's just a rort.
And then you'll pay for the privilege all over again when you have to pay for the white book.
Yeah. And I mean, and even in their care meeting on Saturday, the care meeting notes and recording we received, all the money that went out in that care meeting at that locality all went back into Bruce Hales's pocket. It was either through a trust or through the Palmerston North. Nothing went out to anybody else. Everything funneled back into Bruce Hales's pocket. So, I mean, he may have come, put on a good show. There might have felt to be like this huge relief of a party, but in the end, everybody pays for it. And then some.
Wow. So to clarify what you're saying, Cheryl, in the good old days when we used to go to a Maple Creek care meeting, there might be $2,000 that gets dispersed. But generally that would get dispersed to probably 15 to 20 different people or money pots. Just call them money pots, whatever, different causes or relief funds or whatever they go to. So you could take $20,000 and split it 15 or 20 different ways. The most recent care meeting, the particular one that we were told about, there was about $4,500 to be spent. And the initial chunk went straight to Bruce Hales. Then the next chunk went to the Palmy Party. And then the next chunk went to the All Men meetings in Sydney in December. And then the next chunk went to the Grace Trust. And the next chunk went to the Vision Trust. And by the time the $4,500 was dispersed, all money went actually back to one source. And that's the picture that we're trying to compare for you, how times have changed.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Yeah.
And we should let the viewers and listeners know a care meeting is the first Saturday of the month where each locality each city, town sits down and disperses their money that they've collected from everybody for the month. So it could go to other different priests or heavies, whatever you want to call them. And in this case, everything went back to Bruce, is what we're referring to.
Right. So normally it's collectively decided, where is this money going to go? Although when I say collectively decided, from my memory as well, it did appear to have already been written down, or a certain kind of agreed amount was already actually agreed upon. And it was very uncommon for someone in that congregation to contest or challenge or change where that money was going. And also, I mean, we probably don't need to go into all the detail now, but I'm just assuming there's other overlap in giving happening, not just at the care meeting, right? Like, people have already, in New Zealand, those people have already paid their hundreds or thousands of dollars for their flights and transport. That's been paid separately, and people are already in their monthly regular outgoings already paying money to entities connected to Bruce Hales, such as UBT. So this care meeting giving's additional, right, to those other kinds of ways and means of expenditure.
Yeah.
We'll have to do a podcast another day, digging into this stuff a bit more, because I think it's shocking, and I think that people need to be asking for far greater transparency over where this money's going and how it's being spent.
And I think it's extraordinary to think, like, and Lindy, this is probably a question for you. When you think of money that comes into a church, it's your tithes, it's your offering. And most churches, I mean, there would be the general operating expenses or whatever, but you wouldn't think of that money being used for a party a booze party, a food party. That's not just generally a church. You can't really think of a Christian church doing that. Am I off base here?
Yeah, it's not activity that I've heard of a mainstream church doing. Yeah.
On a technical point, the care meetings are on the Saturday before the first Sunday of the month, and so this most recent care meeting was on Saturday, the 30th of September.
Right. Thanks,
It's a
Craig.
weird Bridget thing.
That is true. And in that care meeting was new rules that were laid out too. And I wish I don't have the letters right in front of me right now regarding some new rules that Bruce was laying out. Well, actually, it didn't come from Bruce. It was concerned elders again. Regarding trade shows. What else was on there, Carmen?
I'm not staying in motels and not going to places where there's no brethren.
Hang on, that's a bit upsetting to hear for me, because trade shows are a really, really important business networking and sales and marketing opportunity. And I'm really confused about why Bruce Hales or why the concerned universal elders would disallow something that would directly contribute to making businesses more successful. Why do you think that they are not allowing trade shows? Is that because I've also heard that there are often trade shows in locations without brethren, and people are going and staying in motels to attend
and having a holiday? So it was becoming. So in this letter, it was talking about like you can still go to trade shows, but they have to be absolutely necessary, right? So, I mean, from what we had heard was that people were using them as holidays, right? People were out having fun like they should, right?
Of course, right. Because it was the only valid option to have a holiday. Mm-hmm. Again, for viewers and listeners not familiar with the Brethren, you are not allowed to go on holiday in the Brethren. Like you categorically can't even go away on an overnight tramp, because you might miss one of the meetings that evening that you're meant to go to. Like you can't go to Ibiza or California or wherever your holiday destination of choice might be. You're not allowed to have leisure off. And so I guess what I'm hearing you guys say is that, I mean, I remember back in there, the only way you could travel would be if you came up with a business excuse. Like I remember our family wanted to go and visit our relatives who'd been moved to Argentina in the Brethren. But again, you couldn't just go and see your family members because they were your family members. Dad had to come up with a business investigation opportunity in Argentina in order to take us. So I'm guessing that's what they've done, is that people have used this business trade show thing to enable them to visit all sorts of countries.
It was a break. And they are enacting the orbit there. So if you do need to go to a trade show, it will have to be approved. So they did talk about approving things through the orbit, through Orbit. So Orbit is their app that if you need to go somewhere, you've got to put all your information in. It obviously goes to a heavy or a priest in that locality, and they have to approve it. So the Orbit was mentioned in the letter.
What if you just book regular flights with an airline yourself? Is that not allowed now either?
No, travel plans must go through Orbit, and they must be approved by an elder in your locality.
Yeah. To me, it was like we talked about the last podcast about the push-pull that Bruce does, right? So he goes to Palmy, has this huge party, and then literally care meeting the weekend after, I guess it would be, right? Or the care meeting after that, he pulls right back. So this is a classic cult move, classic leadership move by a cult leader, right? So I feel bad for those people that get stuck in that or don't see it and just get thrown on this roller coaster ride of this push-pull. I'm giving, I'm taking away. I'm giving, I'm taking away. Yeah.
And another quick warning for all of our watchers and listeners, when you have a Zoom meeting and you are watching it on your UBT computer or you're zooming in on your TV, remember, it is tracking your location. So you can't go camping and take the computer with you or the TV with you. It tracks where you're watching the Zoom meeting from. And a lot of people have got busted and are in a lot of trouble because they did not realize that Life 360 is tracking them wherever they go. So
Oh
if you are being a very good peep and you're watching your Zoom meeting, but you're watching it at the campsite, that's a no-go, because it knows you're out there camping and having fun, and that's not allowed.
It is so 1984.
Right? And they
My humor, I just have to.
they really do track it. Like we had, Carmen posted that one insider that sent us a message. They track you. They have phones that are under review and under surveillance. So yeah. Anyhow, along with what I'm going to let Lindy and Craig kind of join in on what was going on right before this whole Palmy Party had started. So yeah, go ahead, Lindy. Explain to the listeners and viewers of what you guys were experiencing when this was all going down.
Yeah, wow. Shoot, where to begin, Craig? Actually, I'm gonna jump right back and set a little bit of a scene here. So yeah, Craig and I would love to share today about a wonderful woman called Anna Simmons, who was my nana and who was Craig's great aunt. So yeah, she was a wonderful woman who had spent most of her life in the Exclusive Brethren Church and had married a man in there. But she'd actually only joined when she was 11, and I'll let Craig share a wee bit more about that because he is a fabulous historian, especially of family lineage and history and that type of thing. So actually, Craig, I'll let you do a little bit of that scene setting, and then I just want to talk briefly about the letter I sent to the Brethren a year ago before we head into,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so Anna was my great auntie, as Lindy said. My grandpa George was her younger brother. They came into fellowship in 1949. Their parents had both grown up in the Exclusive Brethren, as they were then called, but had both left as teenagers, sort of in the 1920s, and spent most of their lives out of the Exclusive Brethren and were very critical of the Exclusive Brethren. You read through their letters, and through the 1930s, they thought the Exclusive Brethren were a dead, lifeless bunch, I think, were the words they used. But our great-grandpa Alf was dying of cancer, and the Exclusive Brethren basically love-bombed the family, trying to get them back. And in 1949, they did come back into the Exclusive Brethren, and the thinking from my grandpa in later years was that his father knew that the Exclusive Brethren, for all their faults in the late 1940s, early 1950s, were going to look after his widow and 3 children. But what that meant is the 3 kids had this early life outside the Brethren, and so Anna was 11 and my grandpa George was 9 when they came back in. So very strange experience for these kids being baptized into this ultra-conservative church, the Exclusive Brethren. And so I think that's really important to understanding Anna, is she had this independent childhood. She didn't have the Brethren coming at her for the first 11 years of her life. And so she never, just stop me when you want me to, when I've got you up to where you want to be, Lindy. But
yeah, no, that's good.
Anna, came in when she was 11, then when she was 13, her father died. And that, so that's Anna with my grandpa George. And right through when she was a teenager, Anna never agreed with the Exclusive Brethren. She didn't want to be in the church. She thought they were harsh and uncompromising and unscriptural in some cases. And she had asked a lot of questions as a teenager. Again, that's Anna and George together. And when she asked questions of the Brethren, she was told that, they compared her to the people who put Jesus on the cross. So asking questions as a teenager in the Brethren, this was in the 1950s, meant that she was no better than the murderers who had killed Jesus Christ. And that wasn't enough to put her off. And she could see that there was a split coming in the Exclusive Brethren in the 1950s. This is when JT Jr. was going head-to-head with Hal And she had decided that Carl was a nicer, more gentle version of the Brethren movement, and that when the split came, she was going to go with Carl, because she didn't agree with James Taylor Jr. She thought that he was harsh and unkind, and not representing what she saw as Christian principles. And when the split happened, 1959, the infamous Central Hall meetings where doctrine of separation was sort of began to be set in place, she had backed herself into a bit of a corner because she'd fallen in love with Lindy's grandfather, Rob Simmons, and they had married in 1958. And so when the split came in 1959, 1960, and her husband went firmly into the JT Junior camp, she had an agonizing choice. It was either her husband and their baby or her convictions. And she chose to swallow her doubts. She wasn't going to give up her husband and baby. And it was a fateful decision, really, wasn't it, Lindy? She decided to suppress her doubts and stay in the Brethren for the sake of her family. This was in 1959, 1960. And that really set in train of what happened for the rest of her life, really. And Lindy can probably pick it up from there. Thanks for sharing that, Craig. It's so interesting. We forget sometimes what our older parents or grandparents have been through in terms of what they've lived through with the movement. Like being there for those significant events, like the bringing in of more extreme separation and other kind of battles between leaders and the decisions that have gone along the way. So Anna continued to, as Craig has set the scene, Anna continued over the course of her life to have this struggle, that she was what I think the Brethren would call an independent thinker, and by that they simply mean somebody who thinks for themselves, and who doesn't just blindly hook, line and sinker accept whatever the elect vessel was saying. So of course the Brethren use a phrase like that in a very derogatory sense and associate it with spiritual rebellion, but actually arguably it is it's a holy thing to do, it's a righteous thing to do, it's a person trying to live and think and find scripture says that people will stand to account for their own choices, not for someone else's choices. And I think that was the kind of thing how Anna viewed it, was that she had her own sense of integrity before who she believed God to be around what was right and what was wrong. And for her, a key part of that was to honour her husband and her children and her commitments there. But for her, that did not extend to just complete blind acceptance of everything that the leadership of the Brethren said or did. And of course, like many of people in her era, she was 85. Many of our older people have seen huge changes and swings and roundabouts of what Brethren leadership have done, and when they've enforced something and then years later turned around and said that they were sorry, all that kind of thing, which must be very, very deeply destabilizing. I know it was for Anna. So she lived through lots of those horrific things that people have talked about, like pets being suddenly banned, books being burned. Like she had a collection of Christian authors and Christian poetry books, things like that. And there came an edict at some point that all such books should be banned. And so, to her great distress, her and Rob did do that, along with photographs. An edict came out at some point around not having photographs, too many photographs of your children, school photos, things like that. And so she burned all of them in an effort to be diligent and to toe the line, and then in later years it was sort of said, oh no, we don't need to do that anymore. And it was quite distressing for these people who have lived through these things and done irrevocable things, like burning family photographs and photos of their children. Anyway,
I'm kind of, getting a little bit off the path here. But so, yeah, Anna on the outside was a devout little woman. She, had twinkly brown eyes, and she was short in stature, and she'd always wear a headscarf, especially, when she went out shopping and that sort of thing, as you were meant to do. Like she was genuinely devoted. It wasn't something that she put on. She genuinely was a person who really wanted to honor her Christian faith. You can see her there in that photo with her husband, Rob. And yeah, there's another photo of her there. George's, is that, who are those people? Is that her mother and George?
Yeah, so that's my grandpa George in the middle, Anna on the right, and their mother, our great-grandmother Ruth, on the left.
Yeah. And so just a quick note as well, Craig may bring in this later, but George was excommunicated was he in his 40s, Craig?
He was 40 in 1981.
He was 40. He was excommunicated when he was 40 because he was disagreeing with where the Brethren were going, and he felt they were going away from a simple gospel and general Christian orthodoxy and going more and more into extremism and sort of idolization of a world leader. So he had written a letter to the Wellington Assembly about that, which we might be able to share, because I remember when I read it, I was shocked at how similar it was to the letter that I wrote Bruce Hales in 2008. It was like, wow, this letter was written decades earlier, and it was almost identical. Wow. It was really fascinating for me. Anyway, so Anna, like Craig said, was devoted to her husband and her children, and devoted to following God. And so she'd wear a headscarf, and she would, her and her husband dedicated thousands of hours to the Brethren. They ran and rostered all the break system and all the fellowship meeting and interchange system and things like that. They devoted themselves to serving the Brethren. And she was a very faithful woman. But she never lost that ability to think for herself, and she also never agreed with extreme separation as the exclusive Brethren hold it. So, she knew she had relatives on the outside who had never been in, and she continued, like people she'd known as a little girl, and she continued to write to them over the years as the decades unfolded. And after I left, some of these people she wrote to, now women in their 70s and 80s, I managed to track them down, or they tracked me down, and some of them have given me bundles of letters that Anna wrote, and in them she's pouring out her soul and her struggles with the extreme edicts of the Brethren, but also her desire to keep, looking after her family and to honour God. So she... Yeah, but all of this was unknown to those of us on the inside, or mostly unknown anyway. There have been a few people who've told me they knew she kind of had this inner conflict. But, for me growing up in the Brethren with her as my nana, I never saw all of that. I just saw a devout woman. I mean, there are a few things looking back and I think, oh, okay, yeah, like she was the first person to give me a non-Darby translation of the Bible. She gave me a New International Version translation of the Bible, because she said, here, read this. It might help you to read something in more modern English that helps you to understand. And, I do recall that she had photos she's got a daughter out, Kate, and who has 5 children, and she had photos of them not very hidden in her dining room up behind some other photos. They were hidden, but they were not, completely disappeared. So yeah, but she was a devout nana growing up, and she would encourage us to read the Bible. She would encourage us to ask questions. Her favorite verse, I remember asking her, what's one verse that you would give me to hang on to for life? And she said, God, it's in Hebrew somewhere, God is a rewarder of those who seek him. So in other words, she was like, seek, look, and don't be afraid to do that, and God will meet you there, which was kind of cool for me. Anyway, I'm probably getting way off track here, but so just again a bit more of how her story overlaid with mine, and Craig's journey has been very similar, was that when I came to leave the Brethren, I had questioned the leadership, and also came to realize I didn't believe in Bruce Hales as being the man of God and that kind of thing. I couldn't see it anywhere in Scripture. Excuse me, got a bit of a cold. And I was being made to leave my family home, and I was devastated at the thought of losing my relationship with Anna, because she was a warm and loving, kind presence in my life, and her husband came around to say goodbye to me. And I remember that I was sobbing. I was lying down and I was just sobbing, and I remember I just couldn't bring myself to say goodbye to them. Like, I just physically couldn't do it. I was distraught. And she knelt down by me and whispered in my ear, and she said two things that I've just never forgotten. She said, God is with you, and she said, I will never cut you off. Well, for an exclusive Brethren person to say those things, wow, it's shocking, because bear in mind that everyone around me was saying the absolute opposite. Mm-hmm. Everyone around me was saying, you're going to be dead and gone to us. And I actually had priests praying over me, saying that God was not with me, and saying that, saying, God, she's in Satan's clutches, open her eyes, and all this type of thing. So to have my nana whisper the opposite and say, you know what, God is with you, was so shocking to me. And for her to say, I will never cut you off, I was so shocked, because here was I thinking I was grieving the loss of her forever, that she would never talk to me again, all that type of thing. So, same with all my other relatives. For her to whisper that to me so that others didn't hear, I was like, okay, what is this? And sure enough, so that was the year 2008 when I left. Sure enough, in the ensuing years, she secretly kept in contact with me. So she would use a calling card so that the number didn't show up on the phone bill. And she would ring me when her husband was out, and she would watch for his lights coming home in the driveway. And, when she saw his lights, she would quickly hang up. And she would also write to me and to others. And I'll shut up now for a minute and let Craig share a wee bit around what her relationship with him was like. But yeah, the reason why we're giving our listeners this character sketch of this woman is because we're setting the scene to describe what happened in the funeral, because she has just passed away, and we would like to share with you some really unprecedented circumstances that happened there. But yeah, just a quick character sketch to describe to you who this fascinating lady was.
Mm. Yeah, my relationship with Auntie Anna was much the same as Lindy's, and when I was a teenager, I used to call her, once or twice a week, and we'd have these conversations that went for hours, and she was sort of full of advice and insight and all these interesting little details about life. She'd always make time for you, wouldn't she?
Yeah.
And you had her full attention. And as I got older and started having doubts in the Brethren, I don't even remember how it first came up. I just knew that Auntie Anna was one of the only people in my life that I could share my doubts with without being judged for them. And so I would tell her what I thought about the Brethren, and over the course of time, she started opening up with what she thought of the Brethren, which was a huge risk. And by this point, she's a great-grandmother in her 60s or 70s, a massive risk to be telling a teenager what your doubts in the Brethren are. But I think she really...
Because that's fascinating to me, because she never shared any of those with me. She was accused of that after I left. My family accused her of influencing me, but we had never had those conversations that you're talking about. We hadn't had those. It wasn't until the day I left that she showed me that glimmer. So it's intriguing. But you left, 6 months after me or something?
Yeah, I left after Lindy, and I think a lot of the conversations I had with Anna were after Lindy had left, and Auntie Anna and I were reflecting on Lindy having left and what we thought about it.
Right.
And there was very much, and I was talking about leaving at this point as well, and Auntie Anna was very, very much coming at it from the point of view of, I wanted to leave when I was a teenager, and it's far too late for me now, but it's not too late for you.
Wow.
And this was unheard of coming from, someone your grandparents' age. She should have been trying to get me to stay in, and she should have been pleading with me and begging me not to go out into the world. And instead, she was almost doing the opposite. although she never told me that I should leave. But she's like, well, if you do leave, then this is how it would work, and this is how this would go about. And, you have got family on the outside. There's all of my cousins, and, there's Lindy and her daughter Kate and so on. So she was very practical about it. And lots of these conversations that made it clear that she was definitely not on the Brethren's side. And the priests got wind of this. They got wind that she was talking to me, and also that she was still in touch with Lindy. And I remember at one point she got a priestly visit for talking to me. And I was still in the Brethren at this point. But the priest went round and sat her down and ordered her to stop talking to me because they thought she was a bad influence. And that was one of the things really that helped push me toward the exit. Like, if there was one person who could have persuaded me to stay in the Brethren, it would have been Auntie Anna.
Yeah. And
the priest banned her from, or tried to ban her from talking to me. And it had the opposite effect. And as with Lindy, she was great at wiggling her way around the rules. And so the priest had sat her down and was like, "You're not to call Craig anymore." And I was talking to her afterwards, and she said, "Oh, well, they've told me that I can't call you." And so, and my husband, Uncle Rob, he's said the same thing. And she's like, "Well, I've promised them that I won't call you, but I haven't promised them that I won't answer the phone if you call me."
And similar with, at some point, Rob found out that she was talking to me and banned her from doing that. And, but I think, again, she would ring the people I lived with and she would say the same thing. "I haven't been banned from talking with you." So she would call the people I lived with and get an update on how I was doing from them and have really lovely conversations with them as well. So she found ways, and again, it's not because she wanted to be devious. She wasn't a devious person. It was a woman who was absolutely torn apart on the inside between her conflicting desires to care for and love human beings on the outside, who she still felt that she had every right to care for and love. That didn't need to suddenly stop because they had left the Brethren. For her, that strong separation boundary just meant absolutely nothing, both as a human being and as a Christian. So, it's not like she was, trying to be this wicked, rebellious person. She was trying desperately to find ways around these strict rules in a way that could, alleviate her conscience. And I get that, right? She drew a line at explicit lying. But she was comfortable if there were other opportunities presented themselves that weren't.
It's incredibly creative.
Yeah.
And she hated it. She was living in such torment. She wasn't trying to deceive anyone, but she could not in good conscience cut us off. And I remember talking to her about going to the meetings. It was when I was starting to not go to the meetings anymore, and that just wasn't an option for her because her husband, Uncle Rob, was deeply dedicated to the Brethren, and so you went to all the meetings. And I remember her telling me, and it always stuck with me, that she said she went to the meetings as little as she could and sat at the back and tried not to cry. And I just thought, what a terrible position to be in at the end of your life. No part of her wanted to be at the Exclusive Brethren meetings, and she had no choice. And I think how many other older people must be in that situation, because we know it's not just her. And I think of all the older people I have heard from since leaving, and their letters about how sad and lonely they are, and how now they're in their 70s or 80s in the Exclusive Brethren, looking back on everything that's happened and kind of having this moment, what might have been, what would my life have been like if I had left when I was younger?
Especially the generation that went through Aberdeen, right? That's, my heart goes out to those people that went and witnessed and felt what Aberdeen was like, and how the Exclusive Brethren, the Plymouth Brethren Christian Church, is sitting today. And everybody's feeling those same anticipation of something like that happening. Yet these people who have, devoted how many years of their life to this and sit on that same precipice that they experienced however many years ago, it's got to be hard for them.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. We've got a couple of, there's so many letter excerpts from Nana that we could share, but to share a couple, Craig, I've got a couple of those ones that you shared earlier here. She said, this is in a letter to someone on the outside, there is so much about our community that has troubled me greatly over the years. I have felt trapped for most of my life. And she was writing to George at one point, and she said, the contact with you has renewed my hope and courage that our Lord will break these chains of thought that have bound so many over the years. May you be freshly comforted in your lonely pathway, dear George. So this is her writing to her brother who'd been excommunicated and lost his wife and children, Craig's grandpa. And she said, in another letter to one of her cousins on the outside who'd never been in, she said, the biggest conflict over the years has been, can I continue where I am, wearing the mask of conformity and rebelling within? So it is a sad painting, and yet she was a person who did do her best to love and care for those around her. And so many brethren and ex-brethren have sent me messages talking about her love and genuine care for people when they came for the break, or that kind of thing. She definitely did her best where she was, and like a lot of older brethren people, she's got so many children. She had 8 children, and most of those have gone on to have 5 or more children themselves. So she's got dozens of grandchildren and great-grandchildren. And that was another conflict as well that I think a lot of people have, is they've got so many children and grandchildren on the inside that they feel responsible for, and that they know they will lose if they dare to challenge this stuff. And so this, the old adage, isn't it? Faith, fear, and finances, keeping people in the brethren. And I totally agree. I think for Nana, it was largely family that was keeping her in the brethren, not the other two things.
I think the calculation as well for some people like Anna was that they could stay in the brethren and have secret contact with their family outside of the brethren. But if they were outside the brethren, then all their family inside would definitely cut them off. So the only way to try and play both sides was to stay in. Yeah,
that's right. Yeah.
That's a really good point.
Yeah. So that's a little character sketch of who Anna was. But then in the last few years, she actually developed dementia and ended up getting put into a secure retirement kind of rest home complex that I hear these days is increasingly common for people to do with their elderly brethren members. And while this was sad on the one hand, the unexpected silver lining for me anyway, or those of us on the outside, meant that when she was at home living with her husband, we couldn't see her because she would she was forbidden from that. So there's one photo there. I don't know if you want could you briefly bring it up, of me as a young woman with Anna, and she's got a headscarf on. And so that picture, if you jump back, that one. So that was me sneaking to visit Anna at her house when her husband was still working. That was when I got engaged because I wanted her to meet my fiance, and that was quite funny because she welcomed us into her home and gave us a cup of tea, and she also gave us a USB stick with a whole lot of family photos on it, and these were family members. These are family members I hadn't seen for years, so it was like really heartwarming for me. But really naughty of her, but you can see her big twinkly eyes there. And if you jump to the one of her in the rest home with me and my children, so in that one there, that was us. I mean, my kids visiting her in the rest home, and so that was better. We didn't have to do this kind of sneaking to try and see her. We could just turn up to the rest home and go and see her. And you can see in the corner there's a pin board with a whole lot of photos on it. She had a number of these pin boards up around her room, which obviously brethren relatives had put up, and they were filled with photographs of her children and grandchildren. But the really sad thing, obviously, for someone like me visiting in there, was that there were no photos of me or my kids, and no photos of Kate, her other Nana's other daughter, and her 5 children. None of those photos were anywhere to be seen, even though, for years, and while she was in the rest home, I continued to take photos in there and to write to her and give her cards and photos of my kids and that. But yeah, these pinboards were really hard the first time in particular that I saw them, because there were all these photographs of my relatives, my parents, my siblings, who I hadn't seen for over a decade by this stage. And so, I'm looking at the pinboards trying to recognize faces. There's young men who were kids when I knew them who have now got jawlines and, wearing the Brethren shirts. There are lovely young women with babies who I've never been told the names of those children, and yet I know they must be nieces and nephews. Like, those pinboards were really hard to see. And I've had multiple other accounts of former members telling me similar stories of leaving photos, leaving a scrapbook of their children on the outside and coming back, the following month or whatever, and it's just disappeared. So that was like distressing as well as wonderful to be able to go and see her and spend that kind of time with her. About a year ago, I started to think about what am I going to do if she passes away? And my grandpa died as well. And, I was not notified or welcome to anything to do with seeing his body or saying goodbye to him. And things like that just got me thinking about it. And I realized I want to kind of anticipate this and prepare for it. And so I wrote a letter to my uncle in the Brethren. And I said, if Anna gets sick, I said, Anna has kept in contact with me over the years. She didn't keep a separation. I love her. She loves me. If she gets sick, and it looks like she's kind of heading towards her deathbed, I would really like to be notified so that I can come and say goodbye to her in person. And then I thought, stuff it, why not as well? I would like to request to attend the funeral service and the graveside ceremony. And I know that normally ex-brethren don't normally attend the funeral service, but I thought, why not? They're saying they're a mainstream church now. In many places around the world, I'm not actually 100% sure in New Zealand, but halls are supposed to be public places of worship. I want to be notified and to be able to attend. And I was like, you know what? I'll be respectful. I'll wear a skirt or whatever. I won't shout out or do anything. I just want to be able to be there as part of closing that chapter of Anna's life. So I wrote to them asking for this, and I got no reply. Tried again a couple of times, and they eventually did reply, and they said, I don't have the wording in front of me, but they basically said, you're not welcome, and they said this is only this opportunity or this privilege is only open to people who are not opposed to the testimony and tearing our position down. Which I was quite surprised by, because at that stage Olive Leaf Network was not launched, and I was not doing anything to tear their position down. I'd spoken to a couple of media journalists a couple of times, but it's not like I'm going around planting bombs or inciting people out or anything. I was like, this is ridiculous. As a stay-at-home mum with my toddler and my baby, I'm honestly not that wicked, and yet here I was being banned from a funeral for tearing the position down. So I asked them, what do you mean? Can you elaborate? And I got no reply. So that was the end of that. But then, lo and behold, roll on. Was it only last week? I'm already losing track of the time, Craig. Was it only last week, the Palmy thing? My gosh. Yeah. So, all of a sudden, Wednesday morning, somebody got hold of my number who's on the inside in the Brethren, not a relative, and sent me a message saying, I've just heard that your Nana's died. I'm so sorry. And it's like, whoa, okay. So of course I immediately rang my dad, who was excommunicated a couple of years ago, told him he'd heard nothing. I told my auntie Kate, who's on the outside, she had heard nothing. And so then we're left with this weird thing of, what do we do? Like, do we contact them and ask what's happened, or do we sit tight and wait? And we decided we'd give them a few hours to contact us in the hopes that they would. And they did by the end of the day, a bunch of hours later, sure, but they did contact us. They contacted my father and asked and told him that his mother had died. So then, my dad, on behalf of us, wrote an email back to them saying, we would like to come and see her body. We would like to come to the funeral service, and we would like to attend the gravesite ceremony. And he as well said, I've got no desire for conflict. It's just that she was loved by people out here on the outside, and we want to be able to honour her. And we believe that he also quoted the Faith and Practice document.
Yeah.
Because even though we're not in the UK, arguably there's a universal standard, right?
Yeah.
And it's got a particular clause in there specifically for former members to be able to attend funeral proceedings. At first my uncle just emailed back and said basically that just my dad could go and see her body in the home, and that's all. And so Dad sent back and said, no, we want more than that, and it's not just me. There's a whole bunch of us. And so then we heard nothing for like 3 days because, the Palmy Party is rolling out as well. So, Anna chose a funny time to die, didn't she, Craig?
Literally, yes, Bruce Hales was arriving in the country. She's like, nah, I'm out.
I'm out of here. Yeah. So it was literally Wednesday morning that she died, which is exactly when all of the brethren all over the country were mobilising to get to Palmerston North. So it was quite funny timing. And also, Craig, do you want to just share briefly, because I do think this might be part of the piece, about you doing a media piece and the brethren being very aware that was about to hit the papers?
Well, I mean, they're always super aware of public attention when these things are happening, and they had not just me, they had journalists asking questions of what was going on. So I suppose from their side, there's quite a high chance that anything that went badly at a funeral that happened before the weekend was going to end up in whatever stories were written.
Yes.
And
especially given that you were Anna's great nephew and you are a senior journalist in the New Zealand media scene.
Yes,
which they've just overtaken.
I think when you look at the outs that were connected to Anna, it's people like me and Lindy and Lindy's brother Braden of rat poison infamy, like all of the people in New Zealand that have caused the most trouble for the brethren in recent years are somehow connected to Anna. And so this was like a highly volatile, potentially, situation for them, and they couldn't really afford to get it wrong because it could have just blown up in their faces.
Yeah, I think you're right. So, over those 3 days, we're sitting here waiting to hear, are we allowed to go and see Anna's body? And at the same time, we're getting all these reports rolling in about this conference happening in Palmerston. And, we heard reports that Bruce Hales had preached on care and compassion. And we were like, oh my gosh, are we going to see this put into practice? Are we going to receive care and compassion or not, And we were trying to figure out, is this going to apply to us? Why did Bruce preach on care and compassion?
Care and compassion.
He probably didn't know at that stage that Anna had died, but it's like, brilliant. I'm glad you preached on this. Now let's give you an opportunity to put it into practice. And Craig was preparing those articles. He wrote them, and so he had contacted Doug Watt himself, who's a Brethren elder, for media statements. So they knew that Craig was about to release these articles, and we have no doubt that they were highly concerned that he might write something negative about them connected with perhaps a funeral. So we're sitting and waiting, and these, the days are going past, and I'm going, do I book flights to Auckland? Kate's daughter's in the South Island and all her children, do they book flights? We were trying to figure out what to do. And then I decided to book flights anyway, regardless of what might happen. And I was glad I did, because all of the flights were sold out anyway, I think, and the airports were crawling with brethren for the conference. Like there was a heavy load on the airlines. There were like literally several thousand people all of a sudden going, including a bunch of them going through my local airport in Wellington. So, booked flights. And then at 5:30 p.m, the night before the funeral on Friday, an email came through from the brethren relatives saying something really shocking and good news for us. They said, "We have booked an hour in the cemetery chapel for you to spend with Anna, with Anna's body." And then they said, "We will move the body into the graveside area, and then you can have some time there alone." So again, for the viewers and listeners who aren't familiar with this, with what normally happens when someone dies on the inside and their outside relatives, the outside relatives are not allowed to attend the funeral at all. That's held in a brethren meeting hall. And it used to be, when I was in the anyway, that everyone had to come to the funeral. So whether you were at a business or whether you were at the school, you would don your headscarves and your meeting attire, and you would come to the brethren hall for that funeral service. And then a significant number of people would also attend the graveside ceremony. And it was outsiders were allowed to come to the graveside ceremony usually, but they were always had to stand at a distance.
And not so much allowed, as it's a public place and they couldn't physically stop you from showing up. Although they would get devious and they would tell the outs that the funeral, they were going to be at the graveside at 2 p.m. and then you'd show up at 2 p.m. and it would have been and gone. Oh, it got moved to 10 a.m. Did nobody tell you? Oh, we're really sorry about that.
Yeah.
Yes, you're exactly right, Craig. There's multiple harrowing stories of people being buried and only telling their family members, only telling the relatives after the fact. Yeah, and devious. There's multiple stories of funeral times being shifted, things like that, and it seems like it has all been intentionally done to stop outsiders participating at all. And you're probably completely right that it's not so much that they were told you can come to the gravesite. It was they couldn't stop outs from coming and standing at a distance. But there's some really sad stories out there, really hard, of people who have are forced to stand at a distance while they watch a parent or a loved one be buried, and they're just completely held at a distance and made to feel like horrible rejects sort of thing. So
when my great-grandmother Hoyle died, there was a punch-up over her grave because she had 6 children in the brethren and 4 children out. And when all of the outs tried to come through to pay their respects, they were blocked by the brethren, and it ended up in a physical altercation, which is like such a disrespectful way to send off someone that you love.
That's so disgusting. Oh my gosh, there are some really hard stories, absolutely heartbreaking. Like this area of funerals is really, there's some real extreme behaviour being shown by the brethren over the years, and a lot of pain, a lot of damage caused. A lot of people who still feel a huge amount of hurt. Yeah, so to kind of put that into context, for us to receive this email was absolutely unprecedented. For the brethren to actually allow outsiders to be alone with a body and to be able to have some time with her, and for them to leave the body in a secular funeral chapel is totally unheard of as well. And also for us to be allowed time alone at the graveside before the grave was closed, that's like unheard of.
Yeah.
If outsiders have been allowed to step forward, it's still been under the close supervision of brethren. Whereas what they were saying to us was, you can do this and we're not going to be there. In retrospect, it's quite funny because there's some aspects of it that sort of make me laugh, because I'm kind of like, actually, maybe that's just because they didn't want any of their beloved people or their children to see us or to even come near us, because, they believe we're so poisonous that they probably believe if they stood downwind from us, they might catch some immoral influence. Or, that if they came close, they might see my little horns that are growing out of my forehead.
Or I've thought as well, they wouldn't want anyone who is still in the Brethren hearing us talking about how strongly Anna disagreed with the system.
Yeah.
Because I think that would be news to a lot of them.
That's such a good point. And actually, now that I think about it, even things like praying and sharing scriptures and talking about Anna's faith, for them, they don't want. Bruce Hales has taught multiple times, that if you leave, you cannot retain your Christian salvation and that you're going to lose your soul and things like this. Whereas, so there was in the end, there was about a dozen people who managed to make it at such short notice to this chapel time with Anna. And of them, a bundle of them were Christians. They were, these older women who had been secretly writing to Anna for years. There were other former members who were relatives like myself and Craig, and my father. There were others too who and others who sent through messages. Who there was one couple who she had a long friendship with, who she had just made friends with them after bumping into them in a supermarket, and they'd struck up conversation with her. And they were Christian, and she had continued this letter writing friendship with them for years. And so they sent through messages to me too, and they wanted to be there, but they couldn't make it because of the short notice. But so I guess that's another side of things that the Brethren don't want to acknowledge, is that there are people who are outsiders and who are former members who have still got a devout faith, and I guess they don't want to hear people sharing those things and sharing, because what we did then, we had this lovely chapel time with her, and we sang some of her favorite hymns. We sang It Is Well With My Soul and What a Friend We Have in Jesus. People shared reflections about their treasured memories of her. People shared scriptures. It was like a really, really lovely time. And then we were shuffled out to another room by the funeral director. A secular funeral director came and said, the Brethren want to move the body now. And then the Brethren, 4 men came in with their white shirts, 4 Brethren men. We could see them from a distance. And a couple of them were relatives of mine. And they took her body and went and obviously put it in the grave. And so for the listener who might not be familiar with the Brethren only do full burials. They don't do cremation and that type of thing. They take that very seriously. So they've got to do the full burial thing. And so they took her body, and then just a few minutes later, not very long at all, Dad got a text from them saying, you can now go to the graveside. And so off we all went to the graveside. Craig, do you want to share about that?
Yeah, it was the strangest thing, because the Brethren are very big on filling in the grave. At a lot of non-Brethren funerals, people just throw some sand or soil into the grave and leave it at that. The Brethren have always been very insistent that they completely infill the grave, and so highly, highly unusual for them to walk away and just leave a coffin sitting in a grave like this. And I thought the other thing that was really interesting was that the Brethren didn't have a meeting room service for Anna's funeral. And they just held a service in the family home. And I wonder if that is because if they had a meeting in a meeting hall and they had denied us access to that meeting, that would open them up to criticism. And so rather than run the risk of having outs show up at the funeral meeting, they'll just have no funeral meeting at all. And I thought that was quite strange. And to me, I wonder if it shows that they know that they are on shaky ground trying to deny outs access to funeral meetings.
Yeah. And New Zealand is in the middle of a Royal Commission review right now, right? Or there was,
Yeah, and the Royal Commission has spoken with dozens and dozens of former Brethren about particularly the practice of separation and what that means for former members. And what we're hearing from people on the inside is that Bruce Hales is very worried about this Royal Commission is going to find.
Right.
So it wouldn't surprise me at all if they're on particularly high alert around some of these things because they know the Royal Commission is watching.
And I mean, for this funeral to have, like, we've got three pivotal key people, right? You've got Lindy, you've got the Olive Leaf Network. We've got Braden that has the history of the whole Bruce Hales, the rat poison stuff. And then we have Craig, who's a journalist. Like, I think they knew that there was no way around getting around this in the Royal Commission review. There would have been no way. It would have just sealed the deal for the Royal Commission to be able to come in. And here's a perfect example of, three very outspoken people and to be denied that.
Yeah, well, and the other thing is that my father, so he's, he hasn't gone public with his journey, and I haven't actually checked off with him how much I can share, so I'll keep it really brief. But he was excommunicated only a couple of years ago and shut up for 2 years before that, and the only reason was because he challenged the Brethren leaders in Auckland over their some financial decisions that were made, he believes, under the direction from Bruce Hales, and they were financial decisions that directly benefited Bruce Hales's Unispace company, I believe it was called at that point. So Dad had challenged this stuff because he was a school trustee, and that is why he got booted. And I also actually think that even though he's never gone public with his story, I think that they are possibly quite concerned about his what he could share as well if he chose to. And he also was a trustee of he was still an executor of my nana's will that had not been taken off or changed. And and one of the first clauses of the will said that her funeral should be conducted according to her executor's wishes. And so she had a Brethren executor and then my dad. And so legally as well, they would have known that, they couldn't just override my dad's wishes here and completely cut him out. So it seemed like, there were multiple threads that led to the Brethren allowing this for us. But yeah, as Craig said, it was just so beautiful because we could spend time at the graveside. We were able to put flowers on. Normally the Brethren don't allow flowers and do anything like that. They view that as just sentimentality. But we could sprinkle flowers down, and we read the verse about the flower of the field fades, but the word of the Lord endures forever, and things like that. It's not just sentimental nonsense; it's symbolic of things and of things of faith. And then we got to shovel the earth in over her and to be there for the closing of the grave. So also random piece of information for New Zealand Brethren. See to the bottom right of the image, there's tulips on a grave there. That grave is the grave of Darren Stanners, who died in Auckland at least a couple of decades ago. And I think he was only 16 when he suddenly died. And it was one of those young people dying that kind of shocks everybody. And the leaders say that it's the Lord speaking and that type of thing. And unbeknown to us, another former member of the Brethren who used to be friends with Darren as a young man, had visited Darren's grave the day before and placed that lovely bouquet of tulips. And this person has since contacted me to say, oh, look, I can see Darren's headstone in the corner of your pictures there, which is funny because the Brethren all bury themselves next to each other. But yeah, so I guess it was bittersweet, wasn't it, Craig? Because on the one hand, it felt so fitting that this woman who didn't cut us off in life also, we weren't able to be cut off completely in death. And that I think Anna would have 110% agreed with it and loved that we weren't forced out at the end. And I think
she would have loved that she didn't have a Brethren meeting either.
Yeah. Given what you shared earlier about her sitting in the meetings crying, and their funeral services were awful. Like they would never share about the person. They were very depersonalized, wouldn't they? It was more, you would read some scripture or talk about like death or something, but it was never allowed. Like the brethren are very against sentimentality or emotion or even grieving. Like I remember one time seeing a friend crying, sobbing loudly after a friend of ours had died. And she was like told off by a priest, like absolutely shut down for like showing so much emotion. It was seen as, so their funerals were awful. And I think Anna would have loved the service that we had for her. But yeah, I do want to also acknowledge that even though for us it felt like a celebration in some ways, I want to acknowledge how absolutely screwed up it is that there were dozens and dozens and dozens of other of our direct family members, our parents, Anna's other children, our cousins, who were nowhere to be seen at their nana's graveside ceremony. You know, that is weird. Like there's a part of me that's sad that they missed out on that. They, for some reason, none of them came and wanted to be present at her graveside ceremony. Like that's weird, and that breaks my heart as well. Like it's, you know, it's actually still not okay. It's actually still really, really, really screwed up.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that due to her beliefs about the brethren and the secret contacts she kept in touch with people, if they knew about that, do you think that was another reason why they maybe never gave her the burial that they would have normally given?
Could have been, Craig?
I mean, it's just speculating here, but that's been running through my head as you guys have been speaking that, you know, if they knew about these letters, if they knew about this contact that she was keeping, and I mean, it's just odd that they would hand the body right over to you and like let you do the feeling of the grave and everything. Like it's
really strange.
Part of me gets this feeling like, well, she was kind of already 1 foot out. Let's just let them have this. And we're also scoring some brownie points with the Royal Commission in doing this. But, you know, she was already partial worldly.
I've just thought of something. We've heard about them posthumously restoring people into fellowship. Have you heard about that? Like sometimes people have died out and then the brethren have then like been like, oh crap, we got that wrong. We should never have destroyed that person.
Yeah.
We're going to restore them. We've heard of them being brought back, the judgment being reversed publicly in the assembly, and then that person being posthumously brought back into fellowship, which is completely bonkers. But I guess it gives the family some comfort because all of a sudden they can put their photographs back up on the wall of their father or whatever. But I'm just cracking up, Craig, because I'm thinking maybe they're going to posthumously withdraw from her.
Well, that could happen after watching this.
That exact thing happened to my great-grandparents, Archie and Barbara Smith, who were withdrawn from, and then it all got reversed at the time of the review, and then their names came back into the photo books. It was really strange.
Oh my gosh, that's so weird.
But I think also with Anna, the brethren don't know the half of how she went on. Like, you know, talking to your dad, and we were quoting from her letters and saying all these things, and he was, even as her own son, he had no idea that any of this was going on.
He had no idea. He said they're going to be really shocked when they find out a bunch of this stuff that they just didn't know. Yeah. Although I wonder what she did over the years with all those letters, like especially as she started to get dementia, they must have found a stack of them, surely. Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if she destroyed a lot of. She was very, very careful about covering her tracks. And so all these letters and things that we have now are letters that have been fed back to us, like from my grandpa, for instance. And it wasn't until we cleared out my grandpa's belongings, he died in 2019. It wasn't until we cleared out his flat that we found these years and years of letters with his sister Anna. And Anna had been so careful, like even right through the time that she was talking to me. She never told me that she was also talking to my grandpa.
No,
and it just came as such a shock to us when we were clearing out grandpa's papers to find all these letters.
Wow. Then she would have been a great spy or something, wouldn't have she been? So I guess, like, as we, head towards potentially winding this up, there are some things I'd love listeners, especially if they're current or former brethren, to think about. One is that, I mean, maybe I'm just a particularly sort of planned sort of person who likes to think about things in advance, but I do encourage you to think in advance now. If you've got elderly parents or grandparents or relatives in the brethren, sooner or later that question is going to come to you of the news that they've deceased and what are you going to do about it. But I encourage you to think about in advance, because it's obviously an emotionally charged event anyway, and I think it does help to have tried to communicate with your insider relatives in advance about what your expectations are. And everyone's situation is really different. Like obviously with Anna, we wanted to try and be there because, hey, we knew she loved us and we knew we loved her. Whereas I know that for some people, their relationships with their insider family members are so strained that it might actually be way too psychologically stressful, or their parent might have been such a stickler for the rules that their parent might have not wanted them there, or whatever the case may be. But I guess in short, I encourage people to think about that in advance, about what they might like. And secondly, I would say, I encourage you to do what we did, to draw on, to lean into your rights. You have rights as a family member to be able to pay respects to your loved ones. And of course, there's different legalities around that, whether the funeral is held in a public place of worship or not, whether it's in a private burial grounds or it's public burial grounds. But find out your rights, lean into them, use the faith and practice document, even if you're not in the UK. But if you're in the UK, definitely do that. There's absolutely provision made there for former members, no matter who you are. And, whether you're an opposer because you've dared to speak up or not, you have rights to go and spend time and say goodbye to your loved ones. So I encourage people to, the separation is not from our side. So don't find yourself abiding by it if it's not what you believe in and what you want.
And I always attach the faith and practice document after every podcast. It's always in the comments below. So there'll be a link there. Always just click on it, read through it so that you're aware of those rights. And I just want to echo what Lindy's saying, is that this is a choice you have, and this is what it could look like. And honestly, this is what it should be. I mean, obviously, ultimately, it would be perfect if everybody was there together and there is no religious strain put on this kind of a situation. But I understand we're not there yet. One day, let's hope we are. But I think the more and more people realize what this could look like through Lindy and Craig's situation, will really maybe push it to them to realize that, no, this is how it should be done. And there, hopefully, eventually, it can be something that's done together, both ins and outs. That's what it should be, right? Yeah. A mainstream Christian church should be doing it together.
Yeah. And a really important detail around the faith and practice document is that is a document that the brethren wrote. This is not a document they were forced to write. This is a document that Bruce Hales and the legal team that he hired and put in place came up with this document, and they have filed it legally in answer to the Charity Commission's questions. So this is not a document that has been forced on them. This is a document they wrote and said, this is what we can live with. This is what we're committing to do. So you're not asking for something that they don't already know they're committed to do. This is something that they said they would do.
It's holding them accountable, right? Yeah. That's what every single one of these podcasts is for. It's about accountability. It's holding them accountable. And when you know what is inside that faith and practice document, exercising your rights, if you choose to, not everybody, I've laid out with my siblings on what I choose to do in the event of my parents passing away. And it's different than Lindy's due to my circumstances. But it is important to have that laid out, because it is it's a day that all of us don't want to anticipate what goes down. Those are a lot of emotions. And so that if you can think about it pre this happening, and then writing a letter is such a good way. I think it's incredible how you guys thought about this previously to it being happening. And then you already got through a lot of those messages that would have come back at you and how you were going to handle this, right?
Mm-hmm.
You got to weave through some of those emotions.
Yeah, and I think one of the other important things is for people who say that Anna's funeral was a one-off. One of my other aunties died last week, and her funeral was on the same day as Anna's actually, and they didn't go quite as far, but the brethren did invite the non-brethren relatives to the graveside, and they were much more integrated with the brethren at the graveside than has previously happened. And they also invited her non-brethren daughter to come and choose what clothes she was going to be buried in as a sign of respect, so that she was included in the funeral arrangements. And so this Anna's is not a one-off case. Like, the brethren are able to say compromise, of course that's a dirty word to the brethren, but the brethren are able to come to an arrangement to make sure that people are respected and included. And so it's like, people don't have to do what we did, but figure out what works for you and make sure that they know that that's what you want.
And was that in New Zealand too, Craig?
It was.
Yeah. And I mean, I really hope we look for these little slivers of hope that come our way. And you're like, oh, please, like, let's hope that we're changing things here. I hope that it's not just because of this Royal Commission review that's happening in New Zealand right now. And it's not just a way to save some face right now. I do hope that this is something. But I mean, again, it comes down to those ex-brethren again, all of us reaching out for those same requests. And again, it's like accountability, holding them accountable to what they already agreed on way back in 2012.
Mm-hmm. And it wasn't that Lindy and I wanted to cause trouble with this. We weren't out to cause a scene. We didn't want to cause any distress to anyone. We just wanted the bare minimum of being able to pay tribute to someone who we loved and to not be disrespected through that process.
That's right. Yeah. And on this note of funerals, let's also just have a quick chat about some other practical things, because around funerals and death, because it's a topic that's not fun, but it's so important to talk about some of these things. I also encourage former members to make sure that you have a will, no matter what your age, because, hey, any of us could drop dead at any point. So don't just wait till you're old. And if you are older, go and make sure that it's been revised recently and that you're happy with it, especially if you've got next of kin who are in the brethren, because there are also stories around of people who have died on the outside, but because their next of kin were brethren, that, those brethren next of kin then were able to come in and take charge of the proceedings around the body and the funeral. And there's been some quite, disturbing stories around power dynamics there, and who gets to have the say over what happens to someone's funeral and their will distribution and their assets and that type of thing, when that's possibly not what the deceased person would have wanted. And so it's really important, I think, if you're a former member and you do have relatives on the inside, to make it really clear in your will what your wishes are. Who are your executors? And also, I think it's really important to add an enduring power of attorney as well. That person who, if you do lose your mind through dementia or some other reason, that you have chosen an enduring power of attorney who you trust. Because again, otherwise that enduring power of attorney could go to somebody who's still in the brethren and who might have conflicting ways of going about it than what you wanted. So yeah, just a shout out around that. Think ahead. You're going to die one day. Get prepared for it.
And you can specify in your will that you don't want the exclusive brethren or PBCC to have any involvement in your funeral arrangements.
Yeah, you can. Yeah. And same with care of your children, things like that. Making sure that you've sussed out, specified, who you want to have care of your children, because again, it could go back to blood next of kin through state, if the state ends up making those decisions.
When my husband he had his heart transplant 3 years ago, and we did ours up. And I specifically have in mind that the Exclusive Brethren, Plymouth Brethren Christian Church, no family members are allowed to have anything to do with and it's you can be very specific. The lady that we worked with, obviously I explained to her my situation, and she told me how to specifically write it out so that there was absolutely no way around them getting a hold of either my assets, my body, the children, anything. And so it is super important to find someone that you can even work with to help you write it out.
Yeah, that's really
it is super important to do. It is very important to do.
Yeah. And again, it's not to say that you might not welcome brethren family members to come to the funeral service. Like when Uncle George died, Craig, we notified the brethren members and said there's an open invite, but of course none of them came. But yeah, it's not about keeping separate from that type of normal grieving proceedings, but it's about those dynamics of
it's about who gets your body, right? Like if you don't want your body going back to the brethren, that's what to be specific about.
Yeah, all that sort of thing. Yeah. And again as well, also a reminder for people to follow up and check in around how assets have been distributed once someone has died. Because again, usually in most countries, as I understand it, if you are the biological child of somebody, you do have rights to some of the deceased's assets. Is that right, Craig? And yet there are multiple accounts of it seems like a person's assets being distributed primarily among the brethren offspring, and then some of it going to brethren entities. And then like either none or a nominal amount being given to those on the outside, which it's just really unfair. And many times it's not actually what the parent would have wanted. There's stories of, people who know that their parent loved them and wanted to care for them and wanted things to be evenly distributed between their children, but who, the decision making got taken out of their hands, or they were pushed around as an elderly person to give their money to brethren entities or whatever. So check out those things as well. Even if you're on the outside, follow up and check out those things and just make sure that what's happened is fair, because you can contest it.
Yeah, Carmen's very good at finding real stuff.
Well, a lot of people don't realize that in a lot of countries, wills are actually publicly accessible.
Wow. That's fascinating.
Yeah. So if you need help, email Carmen.
Oh, that's fascinating, Carmen. I did not know that.
Yes. Wow. And public, they're actually public record.
Oh my gosh, I did not know that. So when I die, everyone's going to see that I'm giving all my assets to the SPCA.
In New Zealand, you can go to the National Archives and request copies of people's wills.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I can't believe I didn't know that. That's fascinating.
Yeah, it'll cost you about 20 cents a sheet to get it photocopied, because they'll be still in the traditional. Some of the ones that I have were filed, 50 years ago, and they'll still be in the ledger format. So they're held together with the long metal thingies, because they don't scan them in. I think the cutoff was like 1995 in the ones that I have pulled. And so it'll be in the traditional handwritten and hand signed format. So when you get them, they're actually photocopies. Yeah.
Wow. It's amazing.
Really cool.
There you go. So listeners who want to know, if they were in their parents' or grandparents' will who have passed away, you can look that up, find it out.
There is usually a time limit to contest it, though, right? Like there's a
time limit to contest it. That's right. Yeah, I think it's normally within a year or something. Yeah.
There is time.
Every different country has a different time frame and different rules around it. But yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So there you go. There's a story, a wee tale of Anna's life. And for those of you who would like to know more about Anna, here's a wee plug for Craig's book, which is coming out very, very soon. How soon now, Craig? A couple of weeks?
November. So about 4 weeks.
about 4 weeks.
So
Craig's
excited
book
for
coming
it.
out, and he shares a lot more about George's life there, and Anna also does feature extensively in the book. So maybe as well, she thought she'd save herself the embarrassment and kick the bucket before that came out. If they're not withdrawing from her in the next few weeks, they will after they've read your book. Hey, Craig.
She gets her freedom after she passes away.
Yeah. So true. Yeah.
Well, thank you guys so much for coming on and sharing the details of this. I know a lot of people who were watching it on social media will be very pleased to be able to have the long version of what you went through. And I'll attach the links to Craig's news articles again on this podcast for those that maybe have missed it on the first one. And we're also going to add a link to Craig's book that is going to be coming out in November. And also, Craig, you have something that we can add at the end of this in the description too. It's a letter. Can you explain to the listeners and viewers what that letter is?
Yeah, so this is a letter that my grandpa wrote after he was withdrawn from in 1981. He had for a few years been disagreeing with how the Brethren were going under Symington, and his vision actually was that he would get his thoughts together and get up at a ministry meeting on a Tuesday night and lay out to the Brethren calmly and rationally why he thought Symington was wrong, which was always a bold pipe dream. And in the end, events sort of conspired against him, and he ended up being dobbed in by his wife, my grandma, for not reading the ministry, and he was withdrawn from before he had a chance to give his address at the ministry meeting and give his word. What did they call them at Tuesday nights? Addresses, words? I forget.
Words, yeah.
And words, yeah. And so what he did was because he hadn't been able to deliver his word, he wrote a letter to the Brethren in Wellington, stating his position. He called it a brief statement of a momentous issue. And we'll share the full letter here, but basically what he is drawing attention to is that he doesn't believe it's right for the Brethren to be following one man who they're putting at the level of Paul, and he's saying there is only one Paul. He says Paul has gone, and we can't be elevating a flawed man to this position of God, essentially, that this has gone beyond what Scripture would justify. And he posted a copy of this letter to all of the Brethren in Wellington, and this was the letter that his sister, Lindy's Nana Anna, wrote decades later and read decades later, and she wrote back to George and said she agreed with every word. So we'll just share this here for anyone else who may be interested in the perspective of someone who was withdrawn from in 1981, just to show that these sort of concerns are not new.
Yeah, that's really good, Craig. And I should dig out, I'm a bit embarrassed to actually, but I should dig out the letter that I wrote to Bruce Hales as well in 2008, because it had some strong overlap of exactly those same questions there, where I was asking, where are we getting this thing of the elect vessel from? I don't get how we're elevating this person so much. And, I look back at that letter now that 20-year-old me wrote, and I'm a bit embarrassed by some of it. But maybe I can share it with you too, Cheryl and Carmen.
Yeah, all the links will be below this description. Okay. And so make sure you go on there and we'll find...
Because it's kind of a contrast of 1981, did you say, Craig? And then 2008, and it's like the same questions are being, yeah.
And this is not a new thing, and I cover this in my book. Like, we're talking about Lindy's letter in 2008, and then my grandpa's letter in 1981. I've got letters from my great-grandparents' generation in the 1960s about how deeply concerned they were about tailors. And then you go back even further, and my great-great-grandfather being deeply concerned about Taylor Senior, and this has been going on for 200 years now. Like, and
it's going to carry on by the looks. Like, we're going to have children and grandchildren writing letters in 2038 and 58, unless something changes. It's so distressing. People need to stand up.
But maybe also just a word here to the people who were never in the Brethren, who have been affected by this as well. And we saw this at Anna's funeral, that her first cousins, who she had grown up with before the separation days, are now in their 70s and 80s, and they're still deeply, deeply traumatized by what happened when their grandparents suddenly cut them off in the 1960s, when their cousins suddenly disappeared. And I talked to some of those cousins who have never been in the Brethren but are still really, really impacted by it. So the sort of the tentacles of Brethren control go far, far beyond just the people who are in fellowship now and the people who have left.
Yeah, so true.
So that's a really good point. Yeah. I'm so looking forward to your book. It is probably the one book I've looked so much forward to when it's coming out. So we'll attach a link to that below as well. Any questions? You email us at info.getalife@proton.me. Get a hold of Lindy at the Olive Leaf Network. And we are all here to help you guys if you have any questions. Thanks so much, everyone, for joining.
See you later.
Much love to you all.
Bye.
If you are in a high-demand religious group and need help, please go to oliveleaf.network. To share your story or be a guest on the show, email info.getalife@proton.me. Please remember to like this video, subscribe to Get a Life, and comment.